Hello, everybody. My name is Ruth Moore. I grew up deaf. I was born deaf. I went to a deaf school in New York City for 13 years. Then I went to Gallaudet College in Washington, D.C. Now it's called Gallaudet University. I was there for 5 years. I met my husband at Gallaudet. His name is Winchell Moore. And the two of us graduated in the morning, flew home to Connecticut in the afternoon, and got married that very night. Whoa, crazy, right? Yeah, it's nuts, but we've been happily married now for 59 years. So I'm here to give a presentation about American Sign Language. What is it? How did we get American Sign Language? Well, long ago, in 1815, there was a man, he was a father. His last name was Cogswell, and he had a deaf daughter, and her name was Alice. There were no schools for the deaf at the time. Miss Cogswell met a man, and his name was Gallaudet. Thomas Hubbins Gallaudet. And he was studying to become a minister. And he was trying to figure out, what do you do with Alice? So he handed her his hat and put words in the hat. And Alice looked at the word hat and the hat itself and recognized that that word was related to the object, the hat. And that's how they sat down and discussed with the Cogswell family that Gallaudet would head to England and learn about deaf education. So Thomas Gallaudet headed to England and looked around, and he didn't get any help from the people there. They had a deaf program, but they were an oral program, and they used speech and lip reading and no sign language, and they weren't willing to share their secrets of teaching deaf children. They were being very proprietary, but luckily he saw a poster that showed that there was going to be a presentation about deaf education in France. This was in England. So he met somebody named Abby Licard, and Abby did the presentation and invited Gallaudet to go to France with him and see how the education process for the deaf worked there. So together they went to France, and he met a teacher, Gallaudet met a teacher named Laurent Clerc, C-L-E-R-C. His sign name are these two fingers brushing your cheek, because he had a little scar on his cheek from having fallen as a child and cutting his face. So Gallaudet stayed there for 2 to 3 years, learning sign language, learning how the deaf education system worked there. And then he said to Laurent Clerc, "Come to America with me. Help me start a school for the deaf, the first school for the deaf in America." Clerc wasn't really sure how he felt about that, but he thought, you know what? I'll come for 3 years, and then I'll go back to France. And he accepted that idea. So the two of them sailed to the United States together on a large ship. It took 51 days for them to travel. Gallaudet taught Clerc English, and Laurent Clerc taught Gallaudet sign language, French sign language. FSL, French Sign Language. When they arrived in Connecticut together, the two of them established the very first school for the deaf. It was in Hartford, Connecticut. Now it's still there in West Hartford, Connecticut. It's the same school, the American School for the Deaf. They stayed there as the school expanded with more and more students and educators, and the sign language began to change from French Sign Language to American Sign Language, ASL. They had some students who were from Martha's Vineyard, the island. They had their own sign language system in Martha's Vineyard, and that came with them to the school and combined with French Sign Language became American Sign Language. So now we use ASL. It's a wonderful way to communicate with each other. So what is ASL? It's a visual gestural language. It has its own grammar, its own grammatical structure, which is completely different from English. And it's the most used language, about the third or fourth most used language in America, in the United States of America, and also in Canada. It's based on visual and on body movements. It incorporates the movements of different hand shapes, eye gaze, facial expression, head and body positioning, changing the position. Like when Alice is looking in one direction, then I'll body shift and show you Thomas Gallaudet when I'm telling a story. So this body shifting is a very important way of identifying people and speakers and who are involved in a conversation. And facial expression is extremely important because deaf people don't hear vocal inflections. So when people who are hearing speak and use inflections to express themselves, in sign language we use facial expressions. And that works like inflections do to show happiness and sadness and anger and excitement. All of those emotions are emphasized in facial expression. ASL is not a universal language. Darn it, the same with French language, for example, or Spanish. All of these languages are spoken, in Germany. They're not universal languages. They're spoken in their countries. So are you ready for me to show you some signs now? All right. So what we're going to do is I'm going to sign, and the interpreter is going to use her voice to express the vocabulary of what I'm signing. So you will see the interpreter voicing for all of you. She is our communication facilitator. She's a neutral party in this facilitation. I am the one who's doing the speaking through my sign language. So this is what is your name? I'm actually signing you name what. You could also sign your name what. My name, and I'm signing me, name, and I'm spelling Ruth, R-U-T-H. Finger spelling is something that is used when you're spelling proper nouns, and I've left this finger spelling paper in the library for anybody who wants to take advantage of having the full alphabet. So I'll show you some finger spelling now. This is A, B, C, D, E, F, G, H, I, J, K. This is what a K looks like with your thumb resting on your third finger, your tall man. L, M, N, O, P. And a P looks just like a K, only you drop it. P, Q, R, S with the thumb in front, T, U, fingers together, V, fingers apart, W, X, Y, Z. Your name what? My name, Ruth. When I use my index finger, I'm actually saying you and me. Nice to meet you. Nice to meet you. Are you deaf? No. Are you hearing? Yes. See how my eyebrows went up? That means it's a yes or no question. If my eyebrows switch down like this, your name what? That's a WH question. Like who, what, where, why. My eyebrows will go in and down. That's where facial expression is grammar. Are you hard of hearing? Are you? No. Eyebrows up for yes, no question. Do you have a hearing loss? No. Are you deaf blind? No. What are you? I'm deaf. Is the interpreter hearing or deaf? Which? Hearing. How are you? Happy? Sad. Excited. Fine. Tired. If you take your third finger and place it in, one on your forehead and one on your stomach, it means sick, and your face looks like you're not feeling well. How are you? Sick. Aw, I'm sorry. How are you? Happy. That's great. So you can see the facial expression with the emotion. You're going to the library? Spin the L in the air this way, and it's the sign for library. Are you going to the library? Yes. I love books. Mwah! Kiss the back of your hand means I really love reading books. Do you like to go to the library? Yes. Do you read books? How many? Many books. Fun, F-U-N, fun. I enjoy reading books. You're going to the library and collecting many books and then borrowing them. Borrow the books means you bring them home. Then you can read the book at your leisure at home, and when you're done, you can bring them back to the library. Borrow and lend, giving them back. It's directional. So borrowing means that comes towards me, and giving it back goes back out. Do you like to go to the beach? Yes. Oh no. Which? Yes. I love the beach. Do you go swimming? Do you like going swimming? Yes or no? Which? Water. Tap a W on your chin. Lake, you show the shape. Warm, hot, cool, cold. What? Right now, it's a little cool. It's perfect. The water is cool. Perfect. Boat. Boat. This is canoeing. Or rowing. Water. Skiing. Do you like water skiing? Water skiing. Fishing. Do you like fishing? I am not crazy about catching fish, but my husband, Winchell Moore, he loves fishing. Canoeing. Okay, so now we're going to do some family signs. This is female, and this part of your head is for male. So the lower part of your face is where female signs are placed. This is the sign for mother, but on your forehead, the same sign means father. Grandmother is the sign for mother jumping twice away, and grandfather is the same, but from the top of your head. This is daughter, girl, and baby, and boy plus the sign for baby is son. Sister goes from girl to your fingers hitting like this, and brother goes from boy to your hands landing like this. How many brothers do you have? One. How many sisters do you have? Two. How many brothers? None. How many sisters? None. This is the sign for aunt, and this is the sign for uncle. Niece with an N, and nephew. Aunt with an A and uncle with a U. C for cousin. So you can see all these different ones. The female signs are on the bottom of the face, like a bonnet being tied around the bottom of a face. So this is female. And because of the brim of a cap, the male signs are up here on the top of your head. They tend to use caps, men do. So when they sign, it's across the top of the head. So that's how they got designated that way. Now we're going to do some food signs. Are you hungry? No. Yes? Right now I'm hungry. I am, yes. Ice cream. Vanilla. Chocolate. Do you like? Which one? I like vanilla. Do you like chocolate? Yes. Cookie or cookies. Cake. Pie, like you're slicing a pie. I made peach pie. Oh, it's delicious. Peach pie. Water with a W. Tap your side of your index finger against your chin. Water. Milk, like you're milking a cow. Milk. Coffee, like you're grinding. Tea, like you're dipping a tea bag. Soda. Soda, like you're pulling the tab back and pushing it down. Hamburger, like you're making a patty. 3 times. Hamburger. Hot dogs. Hot dog. Some people sign hot dog like you're placing it in the bun. Hot dog. There's different signs for the same thing. Either way is fine. I know I'd love to ask any signs that you want to learn, but I don't have that feedback right now. So let me think about some signs that might be fun. Car. That's a good one to know. Or truck. Different kind of driving. Train. Airplane. Do you like to ride? And which kind of transportation? A car? A truck? A train? Or an airplane? Which one? See how I list them on my fingers. And I'm going to show you some examples so that you could practice. You can go back and watch this video. So I've shown you these examples and you can practice on your own. So the next is I just want to chat about some various signs that are popular, or groups that show groups, culture. Oh, I'm sorry. I'm going to talk to you about different groups related to deafness. That there are deaf, hard of hearing, people who have hearing deficiencies, people who are oral, people who are deaf blind. So first I'm going to talk about culturally deaf. Culturally deaf people are born deaf. They use ASL, American Sign Language, to communicate. Some speak and some don't use their voices. The oral deaf are also born deaf, but they learn through using speech and lip reading, not sign language. Hard of hearing still have some residual hearing. So they use what they have left of their hearing and use their speech. People who have a hearing loss are people who become deaf. Can happen overnight or can happen gradually over time. English would be their first language since they began as hearing and became deaf over time and could possibly learn sign language or signed English, which is different from American Sign Language, and I will explain that difference. And the last group in the deaf population are deaf-blind people. Those are people who happen to be deaf and also are legally blind. And that's a challenge. Some may have some residual sight, some may have no sight at all. It's amazing to watch communication within the deaf-blind community, and I'll explain more about their communication preferences. So now I'm going to be talking about the communication preferences themselves. That American Sign Language has its own structure, its own grammatical structure that's completely different from English. Signed English follows the words of the English word order. So it's structurally like English with signs applied to it. And I'm going to show you a comparison of these two. Me happy. This would be signed English. You'd say I or I am happy or I am happy. But in American Sign Language, you just sign happy, you use more expression, you drop the verb to be. Swimming, I want to go now. That's in ASL. In English, you would sign, I want to go swim. So you can see the difference. The topic is the beginning of a sign language. American Sign Language begins with the topic first. Signed English just follows grammatical word order. Oralism is speech, reading, and speech. They've practiced and practiced. It's very difficult to have that skill. Only about 26 to 30% of speech can be read on the lips. It's very, very hard. So it takes a lot of practice and skill, and there's an awful lot of misunderstanding in communication when people are trying to lip read. Some people are expert lip readers, but some people really, really struggle with it. It's a huge range, and you can't rely on people in the deaf community being skilled lip readers. Some people preferred writing English back and forth within the deaf community to talk to a hearing person. That's their preferred modality, is writing. They're most comfortable with that. They don't want there to be any misunderstandings with the communication through just relying on lip reading. Then there's tactile communication. And that's when you have one hand on top of another, feeling the signs. That's working with deafblind people. That's one of the modes of communication with the deafblind community. And it's amazing because they understand everything that's being said just by feeling the signs. So there's speech reading for oralism, there's tactile for the deafblind. Everybody has their own preferences in communication modality. There's so many different communication modalities. For people with gradual hearing loss, it's hard to know how to communicate with them. But it's very, very important, and I'll share some communication tips with you on what to do when you see somebody or talk to somebody with a hearing loss. It's very, very important first to make sure you know how to get someone's attention. You can tap them on the shoulder. You can wave in front of the person, but from a distance, not in their face, obviously, or a gentle tap on the shoulder. And then make sure that eye contact is made. Eye contact is extremely important. You should speak in a normal pace. You don't need to exaggerate the way you're speaking. You don't need to talk loudly. You don't need to change the way you speak. We can't hear, so it doesn't matter how loud you become. You can use repetition as needed. And always have a paper and something to write with ready, so that if that is a last resort, that can still help somebody understand what you're communicating. And then it becomes easier for each other when you're trying to communicate with each other. Now I'm going to talk to you a little bit about deaf culture and the deaf community and what that is, what that looks like. You might notice that our behavior looks different from hearing people's behavior. For example, I might wave in various ways to get someone's attention. When I meet another deaf person, we tend to chat and chat and chat, and then we introduce ourselves. Hearing people, when they meet, they tend to say hello and find out each other's names first and introduce themselves and say that it's nice to meet you, but there's a difference culturally that way. When I'm with deaf people, deaf people are communicating and somebody wants to go by, they'll just walk right through, right in between two people who are trying to sign to each other. It's not considered rude. Hearing people feel like they're being intrusive and they'll say, oh, excuse me, and try to pass by. Deaf people, they don't even bother because that's more of an interruption. They'll just walk right by and let the people who are signing will just keep going. So you can see there's just a few behavioral differences between the two cultures. And these are some things I'll share with you. We have deaf organizations. Agencies provide interpreters for deaf and hard of hearing people. For example, in Massachusetts, we have the Massachusetts Committee of the Deaf and Hard of Hearing. They have interpreter services. They have case management services. They have public education. They provide education for the public about, so that people can know more about our population and can enable for better communication. We also have other agencies, independent living services. It's very useful. And we have gatherings where we get together in large groups of deaf people, and we have the Massachusetts State Association for the Deaf, the Western Massachusetts Association for the Deaf. We also have the National Association for the Deaf, NAD. We also have an association for late deafened adults, people who've become deaf later in life. We also have groups for hard of hearing people nationwide. So people feel comfortable going to workshops and socializing and feel accepted with their hearing loss. You can go online yourself and learn some sign language if you want. The best thing, though, is to go to a class in person. Until you learn the best that way. You learn to use the right hand movements and facial expression and body movements and positions, and it's better than the internet. The internet's somewhat useful, but you can find classes at a community college or universities. Sometimes the independent living services will provide ASL classes. These are just a few examples. But on the internet, they do have some, not classes really, but information. There's ASL that, and ASL that is a great place to have some questions answered. ASL Nook is another website, ASL Nook. Signing Savvy, SAVVY. It's like a sign language dictionary. Signing Savvy is the name of that website, and then you can find out a lot of vocabulary there. Sign Language ABCs is another website, Sign Language ABCs, and you can get some vocabulary there. So there's various websites. And I'm going to share a little deaf joke with you right now so you understand deaf humor. We're talking about a tree. And I'm a person with a physician. Ready? Okay. So I'm walking through the woods. I'm just walking along, and I see the trees on either side of me as I'm walking. And I think, oh, look at that tree. I'm going to chop that one down, and I'm going to bring it home. So I start chopping with my axe on both sides of the tree, and finally the tree falls, and I feel so proud of myself. And I'm walking along in the woods, and I see another tree, and it's a huge, huge tree. And I'm very excited. Oh, I want to chop that tree down. That would be really a great tree to bring back. So I get ready with my axe, and I work on both sides of the tree, and I'm chopping, and oh, I'm sweating. It's such hard work. I continue to chop away at that tree with my axe, and I yell, "Timber!" And the tree just stays there. Oh my goodness. "Timber!" And the tree just stays there. It doesn't move. So I get in touch with my friend, and I say, "What's going on? I chopped and chopped at this tree, and I'm yelling timber, and it's not falling down." And the doctor comes over, and he uses his stethoscope, and he listens to the tree. He listens carefully to the tree and gives it an examination. I said, "What's wrong with this tree?" He says, "I think I know. I think I have an assessment of what's going on with the tree." He says, "The tree is deaf." I said, "Really? The tree is deaf?" "Yeah, thank you. That makes sense." And I think about what to do. I finished taking my axe to the tree, and then I finger spelled TIMBER, and the tree comes down. That's a deaf joke. There are so many deaf jokes that are passed down through our traditions. Let me just share one of my experiences growing up as a deaf person. I went to an oral school for the deaf. It was not an easy situation trying to lip read all day. Sometimes the teacher would ask me a question, and I said, I have no idea, because I couldn't pay attention that much. That's an example. Another example is my husband and I were driving on the highway. We were driving along, and people were pointing and pointing to us, and we didn't know what was going on, so we continued to drive. We stopped at the toll booth. My husband decided to pull over and check the car. We found out that the muffler had completely disengaged and was hitting the road and was making an awful lot of noise, so we pulled over. My husband was able to break the piece off, that pipe of the muffler, and throw it away so that we could continue to driving all the way home. But we had no idea because we couldn't hear a thing. So hearing people could hear and said, hey, if their muffler falls off, they could pull over right away and take care of it, but not us. Another example is that when I was pregnant, my doctor was on vacation, so they had a replacement physician working who had no experience working with deaf patients whatsoever. So I went to the hospital. Nurse had a mask on. The other nurse had a mask on. Everybody was masked. There was no communication during that birth. Oh my God. The second time I told my doctor, please do not go on vacation. He said, what can I do? Luckily, he was on call when I went to have my second baby. And it was a wonderful experience. He told the nurses to take their masks down so that they could tell me what to do in between the contractions. It was fine. But nowadays, we have sign language interpreters in the delivery room when you're delivering. So these improvements have been gradual and are made over the years. When I first got married, we had a black and white TV. There was no closed captioning. I wasn't interested in it. I would read books instead of watch TV because I had no idea what was going on with TV. But my husband, he loves to watch TV. He would figure out what the story was when he was watching a film, or he would watch sports. But now we have captioning on the TV, so we're so lucky to have that captioning. It made such a huge difference in our lives. Long ago, when I would make an appointment with the doctor, we didn't have telephones. I had to drive all the way over to the physician's office, make the appointment, and drive all the way back home. Then I'd have to drive everywhere just to get things done. Now we have video relay services. It's amazing. I have a screen. Let me show it to you. There it is. That's my video phone. I call, an interpreter shows up on my screen, makes the call to the hearing individual. The hearing person speaks. The interpreter hears what's being said and signs to me. And then I sign to the interpreter, who then speaks to the hearing person. The interpreter is a communication facilitator between those two people. The interpreter is a neutral party. They do not answer questions. The person does not share their opinion. It's like what what you're having now. The interpreter is there just to let you know what I'm signing all the way. So you see, these improvements have happened with technology. Now at the library, they provide sign language interpreters and for the annual meetings and for this event, for this presentation. And I really appreciate the library's sensitivity about the need for communication access for all. So thank you to the library for that. So that really wraps up my presentation. I hope to see you all. Have a nice day. Bye-bye.